All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, wait, why is it showing me that I'm unmuted? Ah, anyway, Zoom's giving me a hard time. All right, welcome to this afternoon's class. This is going to be the Advanced Matrix and Realist class. This is a 1-hour CE credit class. We are going to be discussing all of the advanced features and functions in Matrix, and then a few of the cool extra features in Realist as well. So before we get started with the course content itself, and to give people a little bit of time in case they're running late, we're going to run through some of the basics of the webinar. So the attendees, all of you guys are going to be on mute by default. I did want to clarify, we will have an option to unmute yourself. I'll discuss that in just a moment here. We have a Q&A option down at the very bottom of the screen. So if you do have any questions, please make sure to funnel those questions into the Q&A section, primarily just to ensure that we're getting those answered in a timely manner. There is a chat option if you guys want to share any examples or anecdotes, but beyond sharing stories or whatever, please make sure that your questions are actually in the Q&A section. The chat doesn't really give me too much of a notification that somebody's asked something, but if we end up having it in the Q&A, it'll give me an opportunity to answer it more quickly and efficiently. I also wanted to point out the session will be recorded. This morning's session actually is finally ready for me to post, so I'm going to have that ready to send off as soon as class is over. And of course, as soon as the afternoon class is done, we'll have the recording sent off as well, probably around the same time. I wanted to mention, if you guys have any audio or video issues during the course, to let me know as quickly as possible. Since this is a CE credit class, if you're having any kind of audio or video issues, there is a chance that somebody else is as well. So we just want to make sure that everybody's able to get into the class, get what they can out of it, and then get that CE credit for it. All right. Now, the CE credit itself, I'm going to be sending the attendance records off to our education director, Tiffany Valines. That'll be sometime this afternoon as well. She should be sending that detail over to OREC pretty quickly, but I did want to point out that might end up taking just a little bit of extra time to get added to your license, primarily just because, if I'm not mistaken, OREC is either just recently transferred to a brand new system or is in the process of doing so. So it may end up taking just a little bit extra time to show up on your record, but it'll be on its way and it should appear for sure before the end of the month. All right. Now, as far as the buttons go, I did want to clarify for you guys. The system that has those buttons down there at the very bottom of the screen, you've got the chat and Q&A, which we've already talked about. Again, chat for any commentary you'd like to add, Q&A for any questions. And then that raise hand option is actually going to be if you would like to ask a question with your voice. Now, primarily, if you guys would like to ask a question with your voice, since this is a 1-hour class, we're going to try and make sure that we get through as many of the cool features as possible. If we can avoid it, I would prefer it, but I don't want you guys to feel like asking a question is a burden to me. If you guys need something answered and it's maybe hard to articulate or it's nuanced or it might just take a while to ask, hit that raise hand option. I don't want you guys to feel like you have to type. I'm, as you guys probably are aware, watching me type, not very fast or accurate. So I sympathize. I did want to give you guys that option if you need it. And if you are joining us on a mobile device, it's going to be the same buttons. You'll just have to tap the screen in order for those buttons to appear. Once they're there, again, same functions, raise hand if you want to have the unmute option presented to you, especially important on mobile. And then, of course, the chat and Q&A for comments and questions. All right. Now, if you do end up getting disconnected, please try and get in contact with us at the service desk. That'll make sure that we can actually get you guys set back up and into the webinar. We don't want you to get kicked out and miss your credit. But as long as you're not gone for any more than a couple minutes, it shouldn't impact whether or not you're going to be able to receive credit. But it's 1:05. We're going to go ahead and get started with the course content. It looks like everybody here is eligible for that CE credit. All right. Well, we're going to be starting off in Matrix. Before we do, I did want to read through a little spiel that we have for this. So as technology continues to speed ahead, realtors are either in front of the curve or getting left behind. Now, the public expects a level of technical expertise from the realtors nowadays that's far greater than we've ever seen before. Now, as new trends surface in the real estate technology world, like we had it coming soon a couple of years ago. Same thing with virtual staging. It became popular after COVID, just to name a couple. The last thing that you guys need to be worried about is your proficiency regarding some of these basic tools that you guys use to run your business. The Matrix MLS system and the Realist tax system, although obviously not new to any seasoned agent, they still contain some advanced tools that if you guys don't know about them or might forget about them, could end up bogging down your daily routine, as some of those simple tasks can become frustrating and cumbersome. So this class is designed to teach both new and seasoned agents proficient ways to use their advanced tools within these systems that you guys are using every day. All right, so I'm going to launch a quick little poll. Again, this is just to make sure that everybody's here and also kind of help us kind of curate the class a little bit around the audience in particular. So if you guys wouldn't mind answering that poll real quick, and it's just 3 questions. And then once we've gotten everybody to respond, we can move on. Excellent. That's really quick and painless. Thank you, guys. All right, so it looks like we've got a couple of you guys who are veterans, and we've got one that's relatively new. I'll still make sure to provide some context to why we need to use some of these tools, just in case you guys needed a little bit more practical reasons for this. Looks like all of you guys have attended the basic matrix class. That's great. The basic realist class isn't quite as necessary. It's a fairly straightforward piece of software, but I'm glad it looks like one of you has, a couple of you have not. That's perfectly fine. I'll be adding in a little bit extra of the basic stuff when we discuss it, just to ensure that you guys are aware of why these tools are available, so on and so forth. All right, but easy peasy, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we wanted to talk about, this is actually the first thing we mentioned even in the regular matrix class, is the search function that you guys have built into your homepage. In the basic class, we talk about some of the other widgets, but one of the things that I mentioned is that the search widget that's on the homepage is something that should always be available to you. There's some ways to close it, minimize it, get rid of it, make it kind of disappear, but strongly recommended that you guys leave it available and open. Part of the reason is because there's a address search. This address search that you guys have built into the home page allows you guys to jump in directly to a listing, even if the listing agent doesn't have the MLS number available. Now, one of the things that is available on any of the quick search options that you have is an address search within the search function you guys are probably normally using. And it's going to be found right up here at the top. We've got house number. Instead of it just being the house and street, we've also got the street direction, street type, post direction, and even a unit number in case you guys are searching for something in the lease area. Now, in addition to being able to search for one address, let's say that you guys have a couple addresses that an agent has mentioned, maybe a buyer is interested in, and you guys want to set up a showing tour of some kind. You can hit this more button to allow you to get up to 10 different addresses added to that search at the same time. Now, just as a reminder, all of these searches that you're doing with the address specifically are still going to have to fall in line with any of the other criteria that you've added on your screen. So for instance, if you've gone through and already done a search and maybe have some little leftovers, like maybe you put in a price or something like that, or maybe you guys have a status that's been added, whenever I type in a perfectly valid address, so I've got 1373 Riverside. I know for a fact that this is an address that may or may not have a listing on it, but if I have my price set or if I have a status set, it's not going to be able to find that. As soon as I remove those, I'm able to track down 3 different listings for that exact address. So the address functionality is fairly straightforward. We also don't really see a lot of people using the proximity search, which is actually built into the top right above the address function. Now, what this allows us to do is we can do either a drop down over here, or if we wanted to put in an exact number, including any, decimal points, so like if we wanted to do 0.75 miles away instead of just 0.25 or 0.5, we can put in an address over here as well. So Riverside Drive. Go. And you'll notice that it tries to automatically kind of corral you into the correct address. Always make sure that you guys are clicking on this. What that's going to do is end up drawing in this case, 0.75 mile radius around this exact address. Now, this can be especially handy for those of you guys who are trying to maybe set up a specific CMA or something like that. Then this way you guys can get an exact number put in there of the number of properties that are active and enclosed, or in a specific price range or whatever. So when I go to my map, I can see that with that center point of that specific address, it's got a gigantic radius that's spreading out around it. Allows us to keep track of all of the listings that are in that area. So, and if I choked this up, maybe switch this back over to 0.75, go back to my map, it still has that central location, which is the address that I had it autofill for me, and that 0.75 going around it. So we had kind of briefly mentioned this in the CMAs and matrix class, but I think we've kind of fallen out of doing that. I think we're going to have to try and make sure we're recodifying a lot of our classes, or I am, I guess. We have a new trainer that's going to be coming in soon, trying to get everything cleaned up in advance of them arriving. But that's one of the things that we're going to start discussing in that class as well. But all right, so let's head back to our search criteria. Let's talk now about our search defaults. Now, when I went through and started collecting this particular search, I went to the quick cross-property search. And the only thing that was actually showing up on here by default when I landed on the cross-property search was just active. So everything else in here, I can start filling out manually. I can make sure that the price is in, the city, the property subtype, whatever the case may be. But it's all going to be contingent on this active right up here at the top. Now we can uncheck that and add in, maybe we wanted to search for pending or closed, or we wanted to see what's coming soon but not already active. All of those kinds of things can be done, but anytime I start up a brand new search, it's still going to have active check. We do have an opportunity to modify that with this little gear icon up at the top right corner. So when I go into, let's say, our residential quick search, if I'm very frequently getting in here to maybe do CMAs or BPOs or whatever the case may be, if I wanted to always have pending closed put on there, and I am always working within, let's say, a specific county, so I'll do McIntosh County, and I wanted to kind of keep these as a default so that the next time I come in here, instead of having to check these checkboxes again, put in my county again, make sure that I have the right subdivision, make sure I have the right bedroom count, whatever, I can streamline my search process by just checking the checkboxes, putting in my county, since those are going to be the baseline of all of my other searches that I'm going to be doing. And then up at the top right corner, we've got set/clear defaults. I have two different choices here. We can either set the currently selected search criteria as my starting default, which means that these will always be present whenever I start a brand new quick res search. Or if we've done that in the past, so let's say that I've already set it and then I've left matrix, I come back a couple of days later, I'm excited to use my search, and then lo and behold, I'm not finding what I want because, oh, that's right, I put in a county, or oh, I had a couple different statuses selected. We can come up to the top here and actually reset that back to the system search defaults. Just as a reminder, you do have the opportunity to just clear this out if you need to. So like if I just wanted to go back to my regular search, I uncheck those checkboxes, clear out my county, and I can go back to using the search function like usual. You can do it either way, but the reset to system search defaults will make sure that you only have active set again when you get back into a new search. So Strongly recommended for those of you guys who are frequently doing stuff that's, you're having to fill this out every single time. You might as well just put it in and then set it as a default so that the next time you get in here, you guys are just only ever working in Pontotoc County. Or actually here, let's do, what are some neighboring counties? We got Tulsa, Creek, Osage, Rogers. So I can have all of those built in. If those are the 4 counties that I work in, and I'm very rarely working in any others, I can just set that as a default. And that way I'm never seeing results that are outside those counties. I know this can be frustrating sometimes for especially new agents, because they'll get in here and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I put in all of the criteria that I needed for the client that I was working with. And look at that, I've got 200 results. And then they click on the map and find out that everything is spread out over the eastern half of the state. So setting this in advance could save you guys a little bit of headache. All right. Now, you may recognize this cogwheel if you guys have been through all of you guys have been through the matrix classes, right? If you go over to the results page, we have that cogwheel up there at the top, the same as we did on the criteria page. This is going to allow us to do the exact same thing, except it's going to be focused on these columns that we have data in. Now, from our basic matrix class, you guys may remember that this is the exact same layout that we've had since 1992 when we first started presenting digital records. So if you do end up wanting to make some changes to this, you can just click and drag to move things around, and then save those with a specific layout display name, which means that the next time I come into the system, I can click on that display under this drop down here. So let's take an example. Let's say that I'm constantly looking for properties that are house. Like if I had built this in as my starting default, so I'm only looking for properties that are active, I'm only looking for properties that are a house, and I'm only looking within these counties. When I go to my results, I don't need to see this property subtype column. I can click on the blank space to the right of the name, which is where any of these will pop up with that dropdown. I'm going to click on that blank space and then do remove column. Next, if I wanted to make some adjustments to where things are located, I can move those around. I can even change the sort order. So for instance, if I wanted to have full bath as the tertiary sort, regular bedroom count as the secondary sort, and then the price as the primary sort, I can arrange those by clicking those in reverse order. Now, in case you guys remember this from our basic matrix class, the reason I did those in reverse order is because the primary sort function is going to be whichever one you clicked first. So if I click price and then square feet, notice that the price one turns into a thinner arrow. Square feet is now the primary sort. Click built, and then suddenly I've got price as the tertiary sort, square feet is the secondary, and built is the tertiary or the primary. So if we do those in reverse order, it just makes sure that I'm always having the primary set. Oddly enough, there is not a way to get rid of the secondary and tertiary sort. So like if you guys only wanted it to be by price, you would have to remove a column that has the secondary or tertiary sort, but not necessarily recommended. It is just kind of a little bit of a nuisance to have to always have those on there. But if you're sorting by something that's unique, like the price, pretty much rarely is going to end up having the exact same price number, then you may end up in a situation where you don't even have to worry about what the secondary sorts are. But I've changed my layout. So I've got my property subtype changed. I've got my sorts changed. I do have the option to set this as the default. And again, if I have the criteria that I've set already, removing some of those spare options like the property subtype, the status, whatever, can be helpful to make sure that you're only seeing the information you need. Sorry, Lee, I see your question. Town and school district, always the same. Why no town name? Oh, and actually, if we needed to add the town name, we can actually put in under insert column, we can add in what the city is. Let's say that we do end up having everything is in the same location. We could get rid of these. Like if we were only searching in one school district, like if I was just looking in the Ada school district, If I search by age of the city, I might find some in the Latta School District, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'll be honest, I typically don't care much for having the school district on there, but I mean, if your buyers have kids, they're going to be interested in that. Anyway, yeah, that's a good question though. Oh, then the custom views. I almost skipped over that. So if we set our default, this means that the next time I come in to do a residential search, this is the way that the layout will appear, no matter what kind of search I've done. But if you do end up wanting to do those custom displays, that's going to be under the Manage Display option. So let's say that I wanted to save this as default, so that I'm not actually overwriting my regular system search defaults, but I'm setting up a separate one so that I can leave mine on my regular search defaults. And then once I've completed a search, I can switch over to the My column default. Now, in addition to changing the layout of the results page itself, if I come down here to the bottom, we've got our actions. Remember, when we're looking at these actions, the only time they're actually going to allow us to click on something, except for criteria and stats, is going to be if we've selected some items. So in my case, I'm going to actually just select everything that's on this page. I can either click the top of the column here, or I can click the page button here. Once I have that selected, I can go to print. And this is going to provide me the exact same my colon and then whatever the name was that I gave it as a printable layout. So not only did we customize it for how the results will be displayed, but now we've also effectively created a custom print report as well. I think that this is an incredibly underutilized tool, especially for those of you guys who are still doing prints from time to time, or even just want to email yourself something that has the data that you need on there. You guys can just grab something, print it to a PDF, email it to yourself, and you're good to go. You will notice that these custom ones don't allow an email of that PDF, primarily just because it was a little bit difficult for them to try and program in which columns actually are not publicly accessible. Whereas you guys may remember in our basic class, all of these agent ones are meant exclusively for those of you guys who have MLS access. That's why they're labeled agent. And then any of the client side ones would have the option to do an email of the PDF, except for, no, that's right, they did all have them. Yeah, so like agent full is going to end up including details that are compensation values, and what kind of listing agreement it has, the broker remarks, that kind of stuff. So it doesn't allow you to email it. All of the My ones are going to have to be printed to a PDF or sent to a printer directly. All right. Now, let's now talk about those two extra buttons that we had down at the bottom that are always available. So criteria is just going to bring us back to our criteria page, just like going to map or results would bring us to map or results. But there's always going to be this stats option that shows up here. Now, what the stats is doing is it gives us either a chart option or a tabular option. The charts are going to be the one that we're going to focus on right now. The charts actually have a bunch of presets that we have available. So these system presets. And then there's also the option to customize these so that we can actually create our own presets, which take in a different time frame or which take in specific statistics and how we want to group them. But let's take a look at these basic presets. The basic presets we've got are historic sales by year. So in this case, it's going to be keeping track of which counties and that it's residential. I have no other criteria put in. So if I go historical sales by year, hit generate. I knew that it was going to do that. Yeah, oh, it's because the status is selected down here. Yeah, let me deselect that. Hey, there we go. Sales by year, and it's doing it in this. There we go. Now we can see how many listings have sold and kind of the ups and downs of them. Looks like February is pretty consistently the low month. Besides, in this case, it looks like 2016 had a little bit of an uptick in January, but almost always the lowest at the end of the year. But If we needed to change the way that this looked, we can go to Customize. It'll show us all the details here. And we can also separate this out by which month, or even add in another statistic. If we wanted to see what the CDOM was for those time periods, I can click Generate, and it'll change the way that this is laid out. And actually, if we do end up wanting to customize this further, adding in extra details or adding in maybe the way that things are showing, I can see that there's a line for the CDOM average, or a smooth line, or excuse me, sorry, column for the CDOM average, and then a smooth line for the number of sales. This might help us kind of clarify, oh, it looks like there's a lot of them that actually have a higher CDOM average during those, low sales months. And then as soon as the sales start to pick up, the CDOM starts to dip down. So we can kind of illustrate these things for clients. This might be especially important if you have a client that's maybe potentially upset with the fact that their listing has been in the system for so long without any offers or anything like that. Meanwhile, you can pull up this chart and be like, look, you ended up putting your listing in December. Hardly anybody ended up seeing it. It's going to be pretty likely that it might end up lasting a little bit longer, literally just because of the fact that the market slows down during that time of the year. So all of it's based on numbers. You can even see down here at the bottom, it provides us with a lot of details about the search criteria that were used. And if we needed to print this or email this, there's those icons over here to the side. And we also have the style options if we needed to maybe change the color palette, if you guys wanted it to be grayscale instead, or if you guys wanted it to be sea green because green's the best color in the world, whatever changes you want to make. All right. Next, let's move over to the yeah, we covered that. All right. Let's move back to our recent search that we had. And in fact, actually, I'm going to go back to our recent search using this recent search button on the side. In case you guys haven't messed with this at all, strongly recommend that you guys investigate this. We actually went through a lot of effort to try and improve this particular field. For some reason, when they did the big revamp of Matrix, I think man, I wanted to say last year, but I think that actually was back in 2019. Anyway, they ended up limiting us to just a specific number of recent searches. That's like 15 or 16. We got them to double it. Part of the reason why the number ended up decreasing, because it used to be 50 recent searches, is because now when you look at the recent searches, if you hold your cursor over it, it's going to show you a lot of the details about what you were searching for at the time. It also shows when it was and how many listings it were, just like it used to. Those extra details up at the top can kind of clarify for you. All right, I've got 3 different searches here that all produced 17 results. I don't remember exactly what the details were, but it looks like 2 of these were actually run pretty far distance apart. So I might actually need to clarify, oh, this one includes the gas range appliances. All right, so that's the one that I was actually searching for that one client. So when we go to the stats this time, I'm going to choose, instead of the charts option, the tabular option. This is effectively just a quick CMA, except it's just for you. You can print it if you would like to. But this is just to give you guys a little bit of an overview of the search results, giving you a min, max, average, and median based on a bunch of the different basic criteria that you might need to make sense of. So I like that stats option. It's not something that you guys are going to be using on an everyday basis. But if you do end up in that situation where you need to explain maybe why you came up with the price that you did, or why a client's house might be going on for too long, according to them, you can always use that charts option. All right. Next, let's talk about our hit counter. This is something that we get questions on not too frequently, but whenever people want to know, they're very interested. So I'm going to head over here to the My Listings option. Just as a reminder, you can either click on My Listings here, or if you guys are on the homepage of Matrix, you'll also have this button here for My Listings where you can jump into a very specific category, including My Hit Counters. But I'm going to take the long route just so you guys can see how it looks if you guys are not in the homepage. If I go to My Listings, I'm going to have a drop down up here at the top that allows me to jump between a huge variety of different details about either my listing specifically, my office's listings, or if you guys are part of a multi-office company, there's a my firm listing as well. This way you guys can jump in and see anything that's active within your specific company or anything that's active within your specific office within the company. But the my hit counters option is going to try and help you guys understand exactly how much traction your particular listing is getting by showing you a bunch of different numbers associated with how frequently your listing is being interacted with. So in our case, what I'm looking at here is I've got a listing that's been in the system for a really long time, and I very much hope that people know that this is a fake listing. In case you guys haven't looked at it, it's a test listing. Meanwhile, for some reason, it's still showing up in clients' portals, and 2 clients have apparently viewed this listing, probably much to their chagrin and much to the listing or the selling agent's confusion. We can also see how many times this particular listing has been favorited. We also see how many times a particular listing has had a client that was interested in it, but not necessarily a favorite. We also see how many auto emails that it's actually shown up on. What that means is that this is actually going to be eligible to be shown in 19 different auto emails. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's how many times a client has actually viewed it. In fact, you can even notice a discrepancy here between the auto emails and the client portals, where I'm seeing 19 auto emails could have included this, whereas there was only 17 times it actually showed up in the portal. Just as a reminder, when you're setting up the auto email function for a client, you do have the option to set it up as a concierge mode, which means that whenever the agent actually receives, excuse me, let me start that over. When you set it up with concierge mode, what that means is that you as the agent are actually going to have to go into the auto email selection, like the actual collection of listings that are eligible for that particular criteria the client had asked for. And you have to manually choose which of the listings are actually going to be sent off to the client. The concierge mode is a pretty useful option if you have a client that's a little bit more discerning or is maybe looking for something that isn't necessarily included as an option to search for. Some of the examples I've had are what direction the kitchen faces, what the color of the paint is on the house. There was somebody that mentioned that they had a client that didn't want to look at any properties where the feng shui was off. So concierge mode isn't necessarily that common or really that useful, but it does allow an agent to make sure that they're aware of every single listing that they're sending to each client. It just requires a little bit more hands-on effort. So in this case, it looks like 19 auto emails had this particular listing available to it, but 2 of those agents with auto emails, or maybe even just 1 with 2 auto emails, decided that they weren't going to pass that on to the client, which was pretty wise considering this isn't a real listing, so good for them. We also get to see the previous 14 days, so how many times it's actually been viewed recently, how many times an agent has published this, which, oh no, this was supposed to give explanations when you hold your cursor over it, and it is not. Bear with me for just a second here. There it goes. Okay. All right, so agent published, and this is the text that's actually supposed to appear there. Thank goodness I've actually got this recorded somewhere else. This is going to be the number of auto email searches where the broker chose to send your listing to their client's portal. So 1 actually ended up choosing to send that off, which if you guys notice is the 19 that were available, 17 made it. So 1 agent actually chose to send this, even though it's very clearly a fake listing. And then 2, and notice the 19 to 17, here's the 2 that actually rejected it. So agent published means that somebody manually chose to actually send this on to their client. Agent rejected is a number of auto email searches where the broker chose to reject the listing rather than sending it on to the client's portal. Actually, that terminology needs to be changed as well. It's not supposed to say broker, it's supposed to say agent. Anyway, agent IDX, you guys can ignore. This number is almost always 0. Agent views is actually indicating how many times somebody clicked on this particular listing in Matrix. So this is how many times an agent has actually checked this out. As you guys can see, pretty much none. Agent views, there it goes. So this is how many times people have viewed it, broken down on a, it's like week by week basis. Oh, it's not even week by week. This is just showing the past 4 weeks. Wow, it was hopping in January. I don't know why everybody was looking at it then. Anyway, this is a great way to kind of keep abreast of how much interest your listing has garnered. All right. All right. In addition to the my head counters, again, on this my listings page, if you guys ever need to find any of the listings that you have withdrawn, this is actually a not particularly common issue that we get on the service desk side, but just to make sure that you guys are aware, if you are looking for any listings that you have withdrawn or even released, there is an my off market listings, which shows any of the listings that are off market over the last 2 years. So if you do have something that has expired, been withdrawn, or been released, it'll show all of those for you. Just as a reminder, whenever listings have reached the 1-year time frame, they will expire permanently, which means that you can't keep extending the date out. If you ended up wanting to put in a new listing, you do have the option to import the data from a previous listing. To find that information, you can just go to My Off Market Listings, find the expired listing number, and then whenever you try to create the new listing, you can just import the data from that previous listing over by just putting the listing number in, fill from, oops, there we go, fill from. Oh, because it's not residential. Come on, Mike. Bear with me for just a second here. Well, anyway, you guys get the idea. There is a fill from option. You grab the MLS number from the previous listing. You guys can put that in there. I should import all of the details over. All right. So next, let's talk about one of the tools that I wish everybody were actually using and taking advantage of. And it's actually something that's present on pretty much every screen that you guys go to in Matrix. You notice right up here at the top, we've got our blue bar that has all of the navigation options. But there's always this little white line that separates whatever we're looking at from that blue bar. This actually shows us the speed bar. Now, the speed bar actually has a guide that's built into it. Right over here to the left, there's a little question mark. When you click on that question mark, it presents you guys with a little pop-up that allows us to understand what exactly this is for. Now, the speed bar is a great way to just kind of dive right into a specific search. It's just a matter of learning the basic shorthand for it. So I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit to the speed bar shorthand examples. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to jump back to our homepage. And let's say that I just signed into Matrix and a client is on the phone with me and they're like, hey, I need to find out if you guys have any houses available. I got a specific budget. Oh, and I also need to make sure that they're all in a specific location. So right up here at the top, I'm just going to have to put in what the property type is, simplified down to RES for residential, COM for commercial, LND for land, and LSE for lease. Now you may recognize some of those because those are also going to appear under quick res, quick com, quick land, and of course, quick lease. There is also a xprop, which is going to allow us to do a cross property search, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend using that because that's going to provide you exponentially more results. But I'm going to do a residential search. So they're looking for a house. They're looking for a property that's currently for sale. So I'm going to have to put in A for active. So if you guys notice under this example, RES space A for active, RES space A for active. And I'm going to put in this case, we'll use broken arrow as the example. Since it's 2 words, it's going to assume that any spaces that it sees in the speed bar are actually separating out pieces of data. So if you do have a word like broken arrow, broken bow, whatever, just remove the space so that it all shows up under one name. So I've got broken arrow. They gave me a price range. So I'm going to say 300 to 400,000. And then they also were trying to find out if there was a specific bedroom count within that price range. And you notice that the bedrooms and bathrooms are actually just going to be in order. So any unaccompanied numbers, so like we see that we've got residential for the type, A for the status, broken arrow for the location. The price has a $sign before it. But as soon as we get to bedroom and bathroom, it's just going to assume that any unaccompanied numbers are going to be bedroom first, so 4 plus, bathroom second, 3 plus. And then if I put in a large number that's meant to be the square footage, just remember that we have to put in SQFT afterwards. Now, when I hit enter, what it's going to do is it's actually going to provide me with the search results for residential search with all of these other criteria. So I hit enter. And even if I go back to my criteria, I can see active, broken arrow, price, bedroom count, bathroom count, square footage count, and I've got my results. So we can change this as well. Let's say that we wanted to do a search in an area that might have some overlap with the spelling of a different area. So like in this case, I'm going to switch this over to Ada. When I try to run the search, it's actually going to ask me, all right, current price, current bedroom count, blah, 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 blah. Oh, wait, here we go. Do we want city Ada or do we want city Adair? So I wanted to make sure that I got Ada instead. And look at that, I already got my one result. And again, just to reiterate, this was all just text up at the top of the screen. So if I go back to my criteria, active, Ada, price, bedroom, bathroom, house. So this is especially cool for me. When I was first learning how to use computers, it was back in the old school DOS days. So it was a lot of command lines and stuff like that to have to deal with. I have not enjoyed going back to that kind of stuff, but every once in a while, like doing searches on Google and things like that, this just makes it easier. You can just jump in, type in some text up at the top, and immediately get presented with a search. Because all of this typing out, so let's do residential, active, Tulsa, 300 to 400, enter. Here's all of those. If I were to try and do this with a search, I would have to have clicked on the search. It's already got active, house, looks like Tulsa, right? But I wanted Tulsa City. There we go. And then I need to put in my price. So I'm having to click around up there to try and put all that information in. And there we go. Same results, much more clicking and typing involved. In addition to the shorthand stuff for searching for properties, I also wanted to indicate to you guys, you've also got an agent search. This is especially important if you guys need to jump in and find a contact information for someone or whatever the case may be. We use this on the service desk all the time. I mean, at least 2 or 3 times a day for me. I don't know if anybody else is doing more just because of the amount of calls that they're getting, but if I'm using it that much, I can't imagine you guys won't get a lot of traction out of it as well. So in this case, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to type in AG first. So instead of putting in a property type like we did before, I'm going to be using this agent search. Type in AG to indicate I'm doing agent search, and then just type in their name. So for instance, I wanted to type in my own name, AG Mike Dane. It pulls up my member number, my last first name, which I already used. I got my phone number in here, as well as an email address, what my office number, what my office name is. And when I click on this member number, just like if we were clicking on a listing, it would pull up all the rest of the details. But in the case of an agent search, This is not only providing me with a much, much greater perspective of how many different ways I can reach out to this person and what their email address is, their website is, whatever. We also have access to their active listings. Now, the reason why I like showing this off is because, just like I mentioned at the beginning of class with our search function, where we can put in a house number, a street name, if you guys end up getting a call from an agent, they're telling you about this cool property, and the property might be something that your buyer is interested in, but oh, you know what? I forgot what the address was. I didn't write it down, whatever. I can just go back and say, all right, looks like Michael Urey was the one that called me earlier. I click on his name, click on his active listings. Oh, it just figures I choose somebody that doesn't have an active listing. Let's see. Janet, I hope you have actually, I hope you have an active listing I can use, but I'm going to do AG Janet. So this time, instead of searching for a full name, let's say that maybe I don't know how to spell somebody's last name, or they've got something that's I'm not sure of. So like, I'll do Jane instead, actually. It's going to ask me, first name is like Jane. So notice it's not actually saying the first name has to be Jane. If I click on that, you can see Janet, Janelle, Jane, Janet, so on and so forth. So then once I find the person that I'm looking for, on the second page, hey, there we go. Click on their name, my active listings, and we can find their listings. And again, I just happened to search for someone that doesn't have one. That's kind of the catch with this, isn't it? But that's about it for our speed bar. We do have an office search. Just as a reminder, this functions the exact same way that a lot of the text searches do. So if we end up doing the search for an office, like for instance, try and find solid rock. If I do off for office search, solid, it'll find these, but it might be a good idea to just add in that asterisk afterwards just in case, depending on what they have it's spelled as, or if it's one word or two, that kind of stuff. All right. So, and I'm actually going to shift over now to Realist, but I did want to just ask one more time, does anybody have any questions in Matrix? Or if there's any specific functions that you guys want me to showcase or clarify how to use? Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the Realist side of things. We got all this in there. Oh my goodness. I knew I forgot something. I was wondering why I was a couple minutes ahead of schedule, but I thought that I had hit all of my bullet points here. I did actually forget something in Matrix. Before we move on, I wanted to talk about the Market Watch and Hot Sheets. These are actually a couple of tools that you guys might have noticed on the home page. They're pretty prominent. Obviously, we've got a cool bar chart going on here. We've got the hot sheets that take up a decent amount of space, but just a little buttons over here. So what the hot sheets and Market Watch are doing is allowing you to keep track of specific areas and the activity within them. Now, when we click on the basic residential sheet, you're going to notice that we have, in my case, a pretty small selection. This is because I've actually gone through and customized this a little bit to just be Pontotoc County. By default, when you guys are clicking on these hot sheets, they're actually going to be open-ended, meaning what it's going to show you is actually everything in the system that's had any kind of change with it. So when I go to the basic system default version, notice I'm getting 1,800 results. Now to clarify, to go back and see the time frame that this hot sheet's being run with, it's the last 7 days. So when I click on residential again, this is 1,800 changes to listings. So that means if there's any listings that haven't had any modifications, price increases, decreases, status changes, being removed from the system, whatever, it's not going to appear on here. But we've got 1,800 listings that have actually either been added to the system. You can see all of these new listings. We've got price changes. Skip forward a few pages. Wow, we've got a ton of new listings coming in. I'm going to increase how many per page I have. Hey, there we go. Okay. So it looks like we have a bunch that are new listings. We've got a bunch of coming soons that have come in, a lot that have been put back on the market, either from a pending status to something that was expired and actually got reactivated again. Looks like they haven't hit that 1-year cap yet. Here's one that was withdrawn and put back to active. Here's a bunch of properties that have price decreases, price increases, so on and so forth. Now, as interesting as this may be, notice how cluttered this has become. I mean, there's just a ton of listings showing up here. When you go back to the hot sheets page, there is this customize button down at the bottom that allows us to either change what the details are that show up under these system defaults, because you guys should have these 5 by default, which match, again, the residential, commercial, vacant, leasing, cross property, residential, commercial, vacant, leasing, property. But if we wanted to narrow this down to a specific area, we can select one of those, hit edit criteria, and then clarify maybe which change types we want to include, what property subtypes we want to include, what area we wanted to do this within. So if I just wanted to see this for Bartlesville, just narrow it down to Bartlesville. I'm only going to see any of the ones that have had those changes, maybe active, and yeah, that's good. So pretty much just the stuff that I can actually interact with. Maybe we'll include the price increase as well. By the way, I'm just holding down Control to select all of these. Now when I hit save, this residential, even though I haven't changed the name on it, the residential has been modified. So now when I go in to check the residential hot sheet, again, last 7 days, so I'm seeing the last week worth of content. But since I've localized it, changed the property subtype, and even just changed types, now I'm only seeing 24 results. So this helps me focus into the areas that I'm interested in. Now, beyond making changes to the hot sheets, the market watch is effectively going to be a live count. And we also see this broken down. Instead of it being just one gigantic dump of all of the details, it's going to be broken down into each of the specific changes. This is a lot more compartmentalized, makes it a lot easier to digest. And you also still have the same option to customize this. So if you did still want to narrow this down by property type, Bartlesville again, oops, Barts, here we go, Bartlesville. Now we can see effectively the exact same thing that that hot sheets would have been showing, except instead of it being broken down by a gigantic sheet, I can just dive right into, hey, look, there's 4 new listings. Maybe one of these is of interest to a client that I'm working with, and I can just see those. Or maybe I just wanted to see the ones that are coming soon in case buyer might be interested in one of these, and I can start arranging a showing after the property is going to be available. So it makes it really easy. Both of these are going to have a time frame that you can choose. And the Market Watch also has an option to switch between all of the different property types. So not property subtypes like house, et cetera. It's going to be residential, commercial, et cetera. If you do end up deciding that you want to go back to the system defaults, there's a reset button that clears any of the modifications that you did with Customize. And if you wanted to reset one of the hot sheets that you used, hop in there, hit reset criteria on any of the default ones. And there's also the option to add new hot sheets. So like in this case, I actually created a brand new hot sheet. I set what property type I wanted. I created some specific criteria for it to show. And then whenever I go in, instead of having my system default be compromised by putting in specific details, I have a separate one that I can use that's just for Durant. So pretty simple. I really like both of those options. It's a really easy way to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of the market in the area. All right, so now let's head over to Realist, now that I've covered the part that I almost forgot. And let's talk about the advanced functions in Realist. Now, the reason why we end up saving this towards the very, very end of the class is because there's not too many extra features that we don't cover in the basic version of the Matrix or the Realist class. But I did want to clarify a couple of the cool extra functions that we have. Now, in the basic Matrix or basic Realist class, we do discuss how the quick search functions are very, very simple. There's not a lot of nuance to them. There's not a lot of extra details you can clarify. It's just going to be broken down into these 4 categories with only conditions up at the top right And then for those things that can have multiple items added, like owner name, MLS number, tax IDs, you can add in multiple items. Smith, Johnson, and so on. Same thing goes for the listing number and the tax ID. But since these are kind of broken down into extremely simple categories with not much extra functionality to it, we often just recommend people immediately go to the My Search function. Now, in addition to giving you guys a much larger range of details that you can search for, it also allows us now to use the map drawing tools. So if you had a specific area that you guys wanted to do maybe flyers in, for instance, you can zoom into that area. And instead of having to search for, well, which of the subdivisions am I wanting to hit with this, I can just go in, grab a rectangle, grab this whole area, and send flyers to them. Now, you may notice whenever you guys are adding in shapes to this map, that they're actually going to show up over to the left as criteria. And if you do want to get rid of them, instead of having to click on the shape and hit delete shape, you can just remove it like you would any other criteria by hitting the little trash can icon. But let's talk about these search criteria that we have. So I'm going to set us back to the default general query. When we get in here, put this to full screen real quick, we have the owner name option. So same that we had on the quick search. We have is, starts with, or includes. Now the is one is going to be very straightforward. What this means is that it's just going to be searching for whatever you type in here. And if it doesn't match it exactly, it does not show you anything. Starts with is the one that we recommend, and we've asked that it's a system default. What this allows us to do is make sure that if you have any name that you put in here, it's going to automatically show you the details, whether there's an extra name after that, or if there's a second owner, whatever the case may be. It's just going to keep it a little bit more open-ended and easy to use. Similarly, the include option is going to make sure that even if it's not a name that starts the owner name information, it's going to allow you guys to search for it anyway. Similarly, let's talk about the house number. Instead of it being something that's going to be dependent on how it starts or whatever, this is all number based. So we're going to have is, which means that whatever the number is, that's what it's going to be searching for. If it doesn't match, it doesn't find it. Is between is going to be great if you guys have a specific area that you're wanting to search for. So like let's do 1600 to 1700. And I'm going to say for street name, I'm going to do is, and we'll do Peoria. So I've got 16 matches. When I run my search, I'm going to notice that I have a little bit of a problem. When I found those results, I got a bunch from North Tulsa and then a bunch that are right here downtown. If I wanted to narrow down my search even further to make sure that I have this area selected, I can put a shape around it to make sure that I'm only seeing the results from this area. Because again, it's just adding it as a criteria, just like we would a zip code or subdivision. But to maybe allow myself a little bit more wiggle room and something that I can use permanently, I'm actually going to click on this Customize Search option and go to Geography and add in Pre-direction and Post-direction. Now, when I add those, it's going to give me the option to save this as a brand new search function, which means that I can actually save this for future use, which I'm actually interested in doing. I'm going to use the option over here on the right to rearrange so that I have owner name, house, pre-direction, street name, post-direction, suffix. And then any of the options that I don't need or don't use, I can just hit the X on them or just uncheck the checkbox for them. So notice street, section, or section, range, township, and just uncheck those as well. I'm going to give this a name, blah, and I can either save this, which means that I will be able to jump back into this blah search, or I can hit apply, and now I can just put in is between. There we go. Pre-direction is south, and street name is Peoria. Let's do include this time. And now it's just going to localize all my results. Oops. Oh, that's right, is. That's the option I was supposed to use. There we go. 12 matches. And now it zooms me in only to those that are in between 16th and 17th on Peoria. So as far as Realist goes, that's pretty much the only advanced options that we have, is just kind of customizing the search options. If you guys are interested in any of the export functionality, especially if we wanted to, like, let's say, send some mailing labels to, or send some flyers to these people, I can go to the mailing labels option, play with those. We have some videos and tutorials on the export, but that's what it boils down to, is just kind of giving you guys an overview of how to do those. Oh, pre-direction is just going to be like South Peoria, North Peoria, that kind of stuff. Same thing goes with post direction. So if it was 1323 South Main Street East, that would be indicating what the pre-direction is, clarifying whether it's on the north or south side, or if there was a street that extended east and west, it'll be split up by east or west. Excellent. Well, and officially class is over. I'm going to leave the session open. The advanced classes typically get a little bit more interesting questions, and I appreciate you guys asking them. I'm going to leave it open for now. If you guys have any additional questions, I can answer them. But otherwise, stay safe, wear your masks, social distance, and hopefully we'll be back in class soon. Yeah, no problem at all. Have a good one, guys. Looks like people are leaving, so I'm going to go ahead and close up shop. But again, if you guys have any problems or questions, don't hesitate to give us a call. Have a good one.